Jai Baba, everybody. I'd like to read a couple of poems for this anniversary celebration. And because none of us can go into Baba's room at this time, I'd like to start with a poem about the Avatar's room at Avatar's abode. It's called The Avatar's Room. A photograph of the Avatar hangs above the entrance door, welcoming each pilgrim to step inside. The room is dimly lit, timber-lined, small. A bed, a makeshift table, 2 chairs, 1 large window is all there is. Yet the room is saturated with an impersonal divine otherness, which is ever refilling itself as if from a deep well. Entering the room, I became a Buddhist and sensed a moment in the silence of the awakened one. I became a Christian and caught a glimpse of the inner light of Christ. I became a Hindu and was entranced by the flashing gaze of Lord Krishna. I became a Muslim and was momentarily humbled in the mercy of the Messenger of Allah. In entering this room, I entered the universal heart of all pilgrims of all times and found my own heart mirrored before me. This next poem is called The First Shoot of Longing. In the night sky of the dome of my heart, the stars again sang for joy. They sang because my Lord awakened them. They sang because they were known by him and loved by him. From their singing arose a great turbulence, the surging wind of the singing stars. It circled the night sky, then blew across the landscape of my heart, fierce like a whirlwind. It blew across the farm landscape of my reluctance, through the towns and cities of my deceit and scheming. It lifted the roofs of all my shelters like letters from a printed page and scattered them into the heavens. So great was the fury of this wind that nothing was left untouched. In the calm morning light that followed, only the flat earth remained, clear, open, level, as far as the eye could see. Into this earth a piece of star silently fell like a seed pod, and with time sprang the first shoot of my longing. This next poem is called Cleaning Out the Jam Jar. No one can really teach you how to clean out a jam jar. It's just one of those things you pick up with practice. More than the right knife with the right shaped blade, and more than a flexible wrist and agile fingers, you need to have unflinching patience and maintain inner poise at all times. It's a delicate surgical operation, getting under the curve of a jar where it's hard to reach and then lifting sticky bits that won't budge. It's no game for the faint-hearted and weak. It requires strength and understanding, as in the cleaning out of one's own heart. This next one is called The Solitary Diver. It was a breathless night. I had only the stars for my companions as I walked homeward across the bridge, leaving behind the heat of a sweltering city. As I looked down over the bridge to the vacant aquatic centre below, I saw in the dim light a lone figure slowly ascending the steps to the high diving board. On reaching the top, he paused for a moment, walked to the end, turned around and balanced his full weight on his toes with his arms outstretched to the side. No cars passed by on the bridge. Only the stars were my witnesses, when suddenly he leapt backwards and descended into the dark void. With the skillful precision of a master engraver, he traced through the still air the secret inscription of my beloved's name. Not a sound was heard as he entered the water. Not a splash broke the water's seal, not a star moved from its place. I have forgotten this breathless night and the heat of a sweltering city. I shall not forget this solitary diver who plunged into the cool waters of my heart. Let me finish with this final poem. It's called Changeable Props and Scenic Backdrops. Weary of myself, tired of my lot in life, I spoke to my beloved. Why do you sustain this pretense in me? Why not give it up? Be done with this play of hide and seek. My beloved replied, there is nothing to give up, for only reality is. If there's anything to give up, it is your holding on to the nothingness of appearance. Your role is to play the scene, but not be lost in the shifting about of changeable props and scenic backdrops. Jai Baba.
Singing the beloved's beauty,
Singing the beloved's beauty,
singing the beloved's beauty.
singing the beloved's beauty. This is the sole occupation of the Love Street dust dwellers,
Their only duty,
this is the sole occupation of the Love Street dust dwellers.
their only duty,
Their only duty,
their only duty.
to remain still, still, still.
Oh, busy, busy, busy.
To remain still, still,
Oh, busy,
still.
busy, 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 busy.
With no thoughts behind or before, no thoughts behind or before. Singing the beloved's beauty, singing, singing
The beloved's beauty,
singing, singing the beloved's beauty, singing, singing
the beloved's beauty.
This is the sole occupation of the Love Street dust dwellers.
Their only duty,
This is the sole occupation of the Love Street dust dwellers.
their only duty,
Their only duty,
their only duty.
no thoughts behind, yet the clear knowledge of the divine wayfaring. No thoughts behind,
yet the clear knowledge of the divine wayfaring.
No thoughts before, because of the beloved's infinite caring. No thoughts before, because of the beloved's infinite caring. Singing the beloved's beauty, singing, singing the beloved's beauty,
Singing, singing the beloved's beauty.
singing, singing the beloved's beauty.
This is the sole occupation of the Love Street dust dwellers.
Their only duty,
This is the sole occupation of the Love Street dust dwellers.
their only duty,
Their only duty,
their only duty. Not a leaf trembles,
nor a sparrow falls,
except by his trembling and falling. Not a lover sings,
nor a loved one calls,
except by his singing and calling. Not a leaf trembles, nor a sparrow falls, except by his trembling and falling. Not a lover sings, nor a loved one calls, except by his singing and calling.
not a leaf trembles, nor a sparrow falls, not a lover sings, nor a loved one calls.
Nothing all can be, nor appear as dream. Nothing all can be, nor appear as dream.
Nothing at all can be, nor appear as dream, without his
Being and dreaming,
without his being and dreaming. We know that he is absolute.
we know that he is absolute. We know that he is absolute.
We know that he is, but we only see his seeming. But we only see his seeming. We have busied ourselves in the world of our lives. We have busied ourselves in the world of our lives.
But songs are our only cash, only cash, only cash. Songs are our only cash. We have busied ourselves in the world of our lives. But songs are our only cash.
And what will they
What will they
buy?
buy?
And what will they
What will they buy?
buy? Except maybe one day, maybe one day, maybe one day, maybe
One day the beloved's wings, lightning flash, lightning flash, lightning flash. The beloved's wings, lightning flash.
we have
Busied ourselves in the world of our lives, but songs are our only cash.
And what will they
What will they
buy?
buy?
Maybe one day,
Maybe one day the beloved's wings, lightning flash. Maybe is maybe, maybe is maybe.
As far as we're concerned, our songs have only entertainment value, only entertainment value.
As far as we're concerned, our songs have only entertainment value, only entertainment value. Sometimes
fills us with wine.
But sufficient is his permission to continue.
Sufficient is his permission to continue.
After a billion years of wayfaring, it is no hardship continuing to wait.
After a billion years of wayfaring, it is no hardship continuing to wait.
After a billion years of wayfaring, it is no hardship continuing to wait. To wait. In song stillness, in song stillness, in song stillness, in song stillness.
With no thoughts behind or
No
before,
thoughts behind or before.
in song stillness, in song stillness. It is never late,
It is never late,
it is never late, it is never late. Singing the beloved's beauty,
singing, singing the beloved's beauty.
singing, singing the beloved's beauty.
Singing, singing the beloved's beauty. This is the sole occupation of the Love Street dust dwellers, their only duty. This is the sole occupation of the Love Street dust dwellers, their only duty.
Their only duty,
Their only duty.
test. I said I'll shout. You're very good at shouting. All right. Got a bad temper. Welcome to the 36th anniversary of Barber's stay at Avatar's Abode. When Francis Brabazon first met Barbara in 1952 in New York, he'd already decided that one day there would be a possibility, however remote, that the Avatar might come to Australia. So around about 1950, he started building something special, just in case. And the principle that he worked on was that if you do it yourself, then you put something into it. So he learned how to cut stone from a stonemason, and slowly over 6 years built a stone house for the last 700 years, just in case the Avatar came. Well, he did happen to come, and he stayed in that house, which is now known as Mayer House, Beacon Hill. So when Baba, out of the blue, he was in seclusion, said that he would share his company with people, even though he was in seclusion, with those who loved him and were willing to obey him, and said that he would stay either in Sydney or Queensland. So Francis grasped the opportunity. He's coming twice. We'll build another house for him. 2 places. They had to be new. So eventually he found this farm. At the farmhouse, that would be for other people. A new place had to be built for Barbara. Once, Barbara went north to a place he'd never been before with the Mundley. And whilst there, he told Ramju that he was going to have a program, and he gave Ramju the job of organising a program. He said, I want something bright, happy, cheerful. Let's give the people a bit of entertainment. So Ramju scouted around this unknown town, city or whatever it was, organised food, singers, dancers, musicians. And so Barbara had a show, a darshan program, and Barbara gave them this entertainment and food. And Barbara said at the end of it, he told Ramju, oh, it's a lovely program. Beautiful food, and the music and the dancing was wonderful. A couple of months later, he was back in Marathon, and he decided to have a program there. This time he gave the job to Pendu. Well, it was different for Pendu. There was all these Barbara people around, so he got this one to cook the food, and that one to do this, and got singers and dancers and musicians and put on a show. Another lovely program. Afterwards, Barbara was sitting with the Mandali, and he said, Ramju, which do you think was the best program, yours or Pendu? And Ramju said, oh, Pendu. Barbara said, your program, Ramju, was beautiful. It was beautiful. It was entertaining, had life, etc., etc. But he said, Pendu's was done with people who love me. So there was a different flavour. So Pendu's was better than yours. This principle was a principle that Francis had. And that's something he tried to train us to. So when he found this farm and decided to build a place for Barbara, he could have employed a professional builder. But he didn't. He wanted people to give people the opportunity to make a contribution. So after he found this property, just by coincidence, an old friend from Melbourne, Roy Balch, and his wife, Meryl, another old friend, just happened to be at Maroochydore at the time. Now, Roy was a bloke who worked for the Victorian Railways. And he was a bloke who could think with his hands. And that's not a derogatory statement, because people can think with their hands, make the physical world work. But you could give Roy a piece of timber or a piece of metal and say, make this, make that, and he could make it. So he was the ideal man for what was on at Avatar's Abode. He had 6 years to build Beacon Hill, Mayor House in Beacon Hill. He had less than 6 months to build a new place for barbecue. So Roy was here. That was the start. So Francis sent the message out. He could do with help. One of the first persons to come to the aid of the party happened to be the maitre d' of the Sapphire Room of the Hotel Australia. But he could work with his hands too. He built his own house. Reg Pappel. And also by coincidence, a young man who met Barbara in 56 and then disappeared into the wilds of Australia, working on railways, rouseabout at a shearing shed. At that time, wrote to Francis and said he'd like to do some more work at Beacon Hill. Francis said, don't worry about Beacon Hill. Come to Keel Mountain. So that was the team. Who was the man? I'm sorry, Jack Painter. So that was the team that started building the place. Towards the end of March, Lorna Rouse with baby Rada came up so she could do the cooking and the washing and looking after the house. So the men could get out 7:30 in the morning and not have to worry about anything else except hard yakka until 5:30 at night. Barbara said to Francis later, you did all this in that amount of time? What daring! Towards the end of April, Diana Snow came, Robert Rouse and Lorna's brother, Ken Davis, then May, and then after that, a whole stream appeared. And everyone was given something to do. Everyone was given some opportunity to participate in preparing the place for his visit. It has been said in print that there was loving cooperation went on, everyone worked together for Barbara. And that's true. But of course, with people working so hard and for so long hours, 6 days a week, naturally tempers got frayed, people got upset, ideal material for Barbara. So you had the situation where one woman was saying to another, that bitch so-and-so and so-and-so. And one bloke's talking about another bloke saying, I'll kill him, as he shoveled calming tablets down his throat. One day Francis was out working on the job, but he had to go and buy more materials and food. And he came marching into the house and said to Lorna, right, I'm off. Have you got the list, the shopping list? No, I haven't, Francis. I've just finished the wash. I've done the washing. I've been doing the washing and I've just got Rada down to sleep. Too late, he says. And Lorna said, well, in that case, you don't eat. Well, that brought out the paddy in Francis Travers. He said, you might as well have said, to hell with a lot of you. Well, that brought out the Irish ancestry in Lorna. All right, to hell with a lot of you. So Francis marches off. A quarter of an hour later, he comes back. Oh, Lorna. Oh, yes, Francis, I've got the list. Oh, good, I'll go now. Okay. We all eat. The point being that under those stressful conditions, etc., having had their say, that was the finish of it. No animus was held. Back to the job of lovingly cooperating to prepare the place for him. Something that Barbara noted when he was here. So, Francis Brabazon, Bill LePage and John Bruford left to go and bring Barbara from Brisbane. Francis calculated on the time that they would probably leave the hotel in Brisbane around about 9 o'clock in the morning. They would get here around about 11:30. In those days, it was about a 2-hour trip from Brisbane. And
we're carrying Barbara, so we're going to drive very sedately. And as a precaution, a lookout was appointed around about the time when Barbara would be due to keep an eye down the road and warn people when he was coming. As they were driving up the road, John Bruford was driving Barbara. Now, John Bruford was a man who had a gammy leg. He had polio when he was young. And so he had a specially adapted car, but John was mad about driving. He loved driving. He used to go to the Formula race car, and he admired people like Stirling Moss, Fritz Lang. And he studied the art of driving. So some people used to say he was a fast driver. John said he was a careful driver. He drove within what he knew were the limits of his capacity and the capacity of the car. Okay, he's driving Barbara. So he's driving at a lot slower speed than he normally would. Sometime into the journey, tap on the shoulder. Barbara says, oh, another 5 miles per hour. After a little while, another tap on the shoulder. So John speeds up. 3rd tap on the shoulder. John got the message. Be yourself. Drive with your usual care and attention, but be yourself. So, boom. So by the time they got near Via Burrum, Francis was starting to panic. We were well ahead of time. So he stopped the car at a petrol station at Via Burrum, rang Lorna and said, we're going to be early. So the message went out, we're going to be early. The lookout was sent, we're going to be early. But there were still some tardy folk, men, of course, still at the tents, jacking tools, getting ready. And suddenly the cockatoo runs up the road. Barbara's coming, Barbara's coming. So they, sudden panic. All those who were ready had then the delightful spectacle of a short, sharp cattle stampede down the road, followed by the drover in a sedate white car. When Barbara arrived at the Barber house, Francis, who thought, well, Barbara's had a long trip, he'll be tired, we don't want a lot of people around, had ordered that everyone wait down at the farmhouse. So when Barbara arrived at the Barber house, he looked around and said, where are my lovers? Short, sharp message down to the farmhouse. Come, immediate more. So we all piled up and we had our first little session with Barbara in the meeting hall. One of the first things Barbara spoke about was he asked Francis who owned the property. Francis explained that he had bought the property, but now he was giving it to Barbara. It is your property now, Barbara, Francis said. Barbara accepted the property and then handed it back to Francis, saying, quote, I hold no goods or property. 8 years later, the meaning of the word obedience. And you can read all the details of that in John Grant's book. I just want to run through certain things that I want to introduce to you. So we'll jump down to Wednesday morning. In the Wednesday morning, there was individual sessions. Either an individual or a family would meet for a special session with Barbara. When it was all over, or when we thought it was all over, there was a call for Robert and Lorna Rouse and John and Joan Bruford. And we sort of said, wonder what Barbara wanted. Anyway, another session with Barbara. Well, we were in for a surprise. We went into Barbara's room in the Barber house. And Barbara was sitting on the bed. There was Erich and Francis. And Barbara didn't beat about the bush. He came straight out and asked each individual, starting with myself, are you willing to come to Avatar's abode, settle there and farm the property? Well, he got naturally an agreement from everyone. No trouble. When we came out, Francis was so pleased that Barbara had asked us, and he just felt happy. So he gave me an embrace and he said, in his personal session that morning, that Barbara had said he would be calling Francis to India. So Francis was really looking forward to that as a possibility. Well, not a possibility, but he would be going to India. That afternoon, we had a general session in the Barber house, everyone sitting on wooden planks, supported by kerosene cans, because there was no electricity, so we had kerosene for the fridge, kerosene for light, kerosene for primer stoves. We had plenty of kerosene. And whilst we were sitting there in that session with Barbara said, quote, I feel the love that has gone into preparing this place. And then he said, I name this property Avatar's Abode. The next morning, Barbara visited the farmhouse where the women were staying and the tent site, which is now the Griffith house where the men were staying. We had a session with Barbara. At the end of that, we broke for lunch and we were told to reassemble at 1 o'clock. It was a bright sunny day, just like the day. You can't hear?
They can't hear you at the back.
Oh, I'm sorry. Perhaps I should use the mic.
Yes.
Sorry.
Sam, is it all?
Yeah, it should be right.
I can hear okay up here.
Yeah.
I don't hear all that well.
Start again, Robert.
Well, help! Hello. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
The message is coming through loud and clear. So we broke for lunch. When we came back, Barbara was sitting on a chair in the sun on the veranda. And the first of us who came whizzing around the corner got a fright, because here was a Barber we'd never seen before. Here was a tiger ready to leap out. I came round the corner, saw Barber, stopped and took one step back. Anyway, there were more brave souls who sort of wandered around with their cameras wondering, and Eric said, yeah, go ahead. So they took photographs. And those photographs taken of Barber, there's some of them in the foyer, almost in the same position where Barber was sitting. And there's also some taken by Colin Adams, reproduced in the latest newsletter. So after Barbara had been sitting there, he decided, it being a sunny day, the first real sunny day we'd had, he would go for a little walk. So, assisted by Erich and occasionally Nariman, he walked to the northeast corner of the Barber house. And in those days, the trees were a lot lower, and you can see the sea there now, but in those days it was very clear. And so Barbara admired the fact that he could see the sea, and so therefore he was told that from the highest point on Avatar's Abode, the trig point, up where the pine trees are now, you could also see the mountains, but we couldn't take Barbara there because of his hip. And Barbara liked the idea that you could see both the sea and the mountains from Avatar's Abode. So round about now, Francis got rather spiritually excited and said rather grandly, "Baba, one day the whole mountain will be yours." Baba chuckled and leant across and twigged his left ear as if to say, "Isn't he sweet? The whole universe is mine." A couple of years later, Joan Bruford, looking at a map of Avatar's Abode, the plan, noticed that the rectangle made by the west, north and east boundary had a little piece out of it, 12 acres, which was part of a block of land that went down into the valley and over to the other side, to the other end of Kill Mountain Road. So she wrote to Baba and offered to buy, thinking because that 12 acres was the last of the highest part of Kill Mountain, highest part of Avatar's Abode. Then it dropped away. Well, she thought maybe someday some developer will come in and right next to Avatar's Abode take off that corner, and there could even be apartments. So she offered to buy that, either the 12 acres or the whole 40 acres. Baba accepted 12 acres to be added to Avatar's Abode, saying, "That's enough land for Avatar's Abode." And whilst he was standing there at that northeast corner, Baba said, and I quote, "In 700 years' time, Avatar's Abode will become a place of world pilgrimage." And I can remember thinking to myself, Baba's little joke. In 700 years' time, the whole world will be flocking here, and he'll be back. Other image, other name, same doctrine of Sariputta, in another place. The next day, Baba was due to leave on the Friday. Now, it's been printed a number of times that Baba left at 1 o'clock, around about 1 o'clock. What actually happened was we were told to assemble at 1 p.m. in what Francis called the Baba Square. It's a true square, a true geometrical square is involved. And whilst we waited there, while the Mandali, Francis, Bill and John got cars ready and baggage, etc. for Baba's departure, because they were going to take him to Sydney. And at one stage, Baba came to the door of the Baba house and we said farewell to Baba by kissing his hand. Around about 1:45, there was a call for Robert and Lorna Rouse to come in. So we went in. Everyone else was busy with something else. Baba was standing with their each in the middle of the main hall of the Baba house. And he spoke to us about our coming to Avatar's Abode and gave us instructions, amongst which he said, quote, "Look after Avatar's Abode during Francis' absence." And I can remember thinking to myself, oh, if Francis is lucky, we'll have to look after the place for a couple of months. If he's really lucky, 3 or 4 months. He also said that he wanted Robert to go with him to Sydney, and then he handed the key of the Baba house to Lorna and instructed her that when he left, she was to lock the Baba house, to tell all to keep away from the Baba house, and no one was allowed to enter for 24 hours. So when we were dismissed from Baba's presence, I had to race up to the tent site, have the fastest bath in history, grab a few things, come back in time to pile into the back of the Fiat with all the luggage. Now, when people say, when did Baba leave Avatar's Abode? I always say 2:30, and that was probably the time that Baba's car crossed the border into Queensland. But the exact time his car started moving, I know very well for two reasons. One was, the moment the car started moving, I looked at my watch. The other reason was that the next day we arrived in Sydney at 10 o'clock. Barbara's plane to Bombay didn't leave till 10:30. So we all camped at Beacon Hill. And in the afternoon, the four Australians were seated before Barbara, and he's talking to us. Suddenly he says, "Robert, what's the time?" So I looked at my watch. The minute hand was somewhere between 22 and 23 minutes to 3. I was young and eager in those days, and wishing to appear dynamic and on the ball, I didn't bother to work out the finer details. I grabbed at the nearest round figure and said, "It's 20 to 3, Barbara." Barbara goes on talking for a while. Then he says, "Robert, what's the time now?" I looked at my watch. It's exactly 20 minutes to 3. Well, there's no escape. It's 20 to 3, Barbara. "Amazing," says Barbara. "Here we are all sitting and talking, and time has stood still." So I can state categorically that Barbara's car started moving at 25 minutes past 2. So Barbara left, went back to India. Francis, the Rouses and the Brufords settled into residence at Avatar's Abode. Only Francis didn't really settle, of course. He was sweating on that call to India. And Barbara made him wait. Well, no one knows why Barbara does anything. Perhaps Barbara was waiting for Francis because, by coincidence, Barbara's call to Francis came when Francis had finally finished making the last-minute corrections of the second typed version of Stay With God, and Lorna had typed up the last papers, and he'd finished. And he was thrilled not only to be going for whatever time it was with Barbara, but he could take with him the finished, completed manuscript of Stay With God. So Francis went off. Neither he nor we knew how long he would be. And by August 1959, he was still there. And one day Barbara said, "Francis, tomorrow morning is your morning. You can ask any question you want to ask. We will discuss anything you wish to discuss." So the next morning, Francis had his little session. Actually, it was a 2-hour session. And naturally, Avatar's Abode was a subject for discussion. During which Barbara said, and I quote, "Avatar's Abode will one day become a real abode of God." And Francis, remembering what Barbara had said while standing at the corner of the Barbara house, told Barbara, informed Barbara, that he'd said something like that when he was there, but that he'd said it in the context of 700 years. Barbara said, "Don't worry about 700 years, Francis. Avatar's Abode will definitely become a real abode of God, and well before then." So you see, we are all involved. We are all participants in the very beginnings of a very special history. Jai Baba.
This is another guzzle from our favourite book, The Beloved is All in All. The world is being run on time, by time, for time, and at no time are we free. Free just to sit and enjoy even the outward forms of the Beloved's beauty. Each drop bubble in time is a sphere, bounded but infinite, so fragile that yet the whole creation is held in it. It is a mirror reflecting, never truth, but the drop soul's desires, no matter how deep one dives in this truth quest, or how high one aspires. Good man, bad man, economy tailored or king-sized, each gazes in his bubble mirror, self-hypnotized. Since the blows of my will are too feeble to break my looking glass, at least, beloved, let it be only your all-loving face. Then, though still in time, I will no longer be a fool under time's tyranny, but under your benign rule. The amazing universe and this beautiful earth will vanish, leaving not a trace behind, when his glance shatters this so unbreakable mirror of my mind.
Reading in the Tomb by Stephen Paul Miller. In this book, Francis Brabazon prefaces Stay with God, I have tried to offer some praise to one who has not so much changed the course of my life, but given it sanction. Before meeting Meher Baba, Francis said his own religion was a quest for beauty, what it is, and its relation to truth. One of the manifestations of his passion was writing. Francis said that Baba proved the truth and beauty motivating him. This gave the poet the ultimate authorization to keep doing what he had been doing on a whole other level. My story isn't quite like that. But looking back upon my experiences on Samadhi Hill, it feels as if Baba was doing something for me, though of course I can't know. In the early 70s, I'd sit in the tomb writing poetry that went all over the place. These poems make sense to me now, but at the time I wasn't going for sense. This is the kind of poetry I was writing in the tomb. The Already Shuffled. It was so peaceful, as if to correspond with a chance I had lost. But is all this revolving around myself, trying to get away from something? And if gray is the pure tone, am I the greener tensions, anxiously compressed? Flying around with these little bugs, why must my discoveries always be negative? To discover what you hadn't been doing, who cares what you've done? Or bypassing the customs official, I'm harassed. Or just in general, feeling like a sandy vegetable. In retrospect, a trodden salad. The piece has already turned into a cave-in, as if God's impatience were my guilt. But most of all, I feel I've missed a chance. Many chances, in fact, form a pattern, which coming in retrospect seems a shadow. I think people were complaining about me writing in the tomb, and I suspect that had something to do with the prohibition against writing inside the tomb soon thereafter. As the above poem indicates, I was nervous about my future. Few make a living as a poet, but I wasn't particularly suited for anything else, if even that. I had all kinds of ideas that weren't for me, such as going to architecture school. In the tomb, I silently asked Baba what I should do. I would do whatever I felt Baba wanted. Then I heard Baba more clearly than ever before. It was a real voice, a little like mine, but silent and speaking inside me. The exact words were, "You can do whatever you want to do, but I want you to be a writer." This was strange. It was unlike anything I'd think on my own or would have even considered. Writing and poetry were completely different to me. I couldn't even write term papers. I was a poet, not a writer. I had no interest in writing itself. I immediately noted the oddity of the word writing. I kept hearing what I heard Baba say he wanted. It seemed to me that he was saying he wanted me to continue in my own peculiar fashion what he'd already chosen for me, but change just enough to meet the world halfway. I may write poetry on my terms, but I would also have to write on the world's terms. I had to have confidence in my ability to write whatever the world put before me, because whatever the world put in front of me was one manifestation of Baba and what I had to learn or unlearn. In retrospect, it was integral to my development that I feel more comfortable writing discursively. I needed a cohesive medium to unwind in. I might still have the same problems I have always had, but I was perhaps just slightly less attached to them. For instance, when angry, I could more often avoid acting on that anger by putting my emotions and thoughts into words, and to that extent, having power over them. Still, I was nervous. Being a writer seemed only slightly more practical than being a poet. I asked Arich if I should get a PhD, and he said yes. Baba doesn't want you to be a bum. I found Arich to be more or less right about everything. Yet being an out-of-work PhD wasn't much more practical than being a poet. After a while, I went up to the tomb and asked Baba exactly what he wanted me to do. I had my eyes closed, but opened them because I thought I heard something. In a firm but reassuring outside voice that was inside me, I heard, "You can do whatever you want to do, but I want you to get a PhD in American civilization at NYU, New York University." I thought it was strange for Baba to say American civilization, because when Gandhi was in London, he was asked what he thought about Western civilization, and he famously replied, "I think it would be a good idea." Why did Baba want me to get a PhD in American civilization? I think because it allowed me to express myself, and that allowed me to succeed at it. Going into an interdisciplinary field allowed me to make uncanny comparisons and see the same forces at work in entirely different fields. I could be scholarly and based in the world, but at the same time poetic and yet relevant. I wrote a dissertation, Seeing the 70s Through Watergate, John Ashbery's Self-Portrait in a Convex Mirror, 70s Films, and Jasper Johns' mid-70s crosshatch paintings. I found the polarization was still experiencing. It was fun. The dissertation was published by a major university press, and it led me to become a tenured full professor, free to teach creative writing, poetry, film, and culture. It's not perfect, but it's fun. And when life has posed what seemed like momentous problems, I could devote myself to them without worrying about job security. I think Baba knew what he was doing. Thank you, Che Baba.
Jai Baba. I would like to share a poem, another poem that I've recently written, which is in the process of becoming a song, but I'll just read it for this one. It's called Take Heart. Take heart, for in your heart lives the seed of the courage you will need to get up every day. and seek to find a way to face the fears and then walk through them, keeping mind's eye on the task of constantly remembering. This is hard, but it will pass, and beauty still surrounds us in 1,000 tiny things. Even when the world looks darkest, beauty sings. She always sings. So don't let dark imaginings obscure the strength within. Take heart. You'll find your courage there, and always seek to sing with acts of kindness, large and small. Each one can always bring some happiness into this life. No matter how much fear and strife, helping others, holding fast to deepest values. What will last, and has through history's lengthy march, the love and care we show each other, remembering we are sisters and brothers, no matter how much fear and strife. No matter what our seeming hues, our surface natures, varying views, at heart there plays the self-same beat. It is only fear that can defeat. No matter how much fear and strife swirls in disconcerting hues, find the beauty through the blues. Look within, and you will find the courage you need to still be kind. Take heart. It is the only way. You'll have to do it day by day. Take heart. Don't feed the flame of fears that always brings us only tears. Take heart. Nurture the courage seed. Don't let fear and hatred breed. Be generous in times of need. Let heart's true values shape word and deed. Don't give in to fear and greed. All humanity has need of you, each one, to do your best, and then to trust, and leave the rest to that great mystery called life, that never gives up, no matter the strife. Take heart, we are in this together. Each one counts. Each one can weather whatever challenges come our way if we take heart and simply stay true to the values deep inside. Even in isolation, we must not hide our hearts, but let our love, our heart, love and guide. Take heart and laugh and sing and play. Take heart, it is the surest way to conquer fear just day by day. Avatar Meher Baba Ki Jai.
When the Lord of love comes walking right into your heart, make sure your heart's wide open so you don't miss a single part of the awakening. The awakening of your heart, the awakening, awakening. To receive it all, the awakening, awakening of your heart, awakening, awakening of your heart. You can put those books away. Just repeat the names of God and be humble when you pray for the awakening. Awakening of your heart. Awakening. Awakening of your heart. When the Lord of love takes presence in your yearning heart, feed him with remembrance till he consumes your every part in the awakening. Awakening of your heart. Awakening. Awakening of your heart. When the Lord of love comes knocking, knocking on your heart's door, make sure your heart is open so he enters at the core for the awakening. Awakening of your heart. Awakening. Awakening